Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thank you for joining me here for another week. I'm excited to bring to you another interview with Seth Mulder. Now, he joins us from all the way over in the US. It is 5:30 in the morning here at recording this time, so it's not as early for him over there. But I'm excited to have him on the podcast to bring some energy and just let us know the Seth Mulder story. So, Seth, thanks so much for joining me. As we get into it, do you want to just give everybody the overview, the lay of the land on Seth Mulder?
Absolutely. Thanks, mate. Okay, I just had to get that in there early. Yeah, I'm super excited to be with you, and I mean, kudos to you, Matt. I know my wife and I build an international business, so I know all about the time change, and I mean, you just got to show up. You got to show up when the people are. So, but my hat's off to you today for being in the studio earlier. So I live here in the U.S. I was born here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Anybody ever heard of Salt Lake City, Utah? Out kind of on the reaches, the far reaches of the Rocky Mountains. But I was blessed. My mom was a single mom, by the way. When I came into the world, she left the family farm, went off to the big city in Oregon, Eastern Oregon. A lot of sagebrush, a lot of deserty, high desert, and my grandparents were cattle ranchers. So she left small town USA for quote unquote the big city. I mean, anybody who's been to Salt Lake City knows it's a city, but it's not New York or Los Angeles. Thank goodness. And guess what? Sometime later, 9 months and some change later, I showed up, and at some point, my grandmother came out to the city. I was probably 9 months old and said, "Hey, come home and bring that boy with you." And so I got to grow up, pardon me, literally on a cattle ranch with my grandfather as the main male influence in my life when I was very young. And lots of aunts around, and my grandma and my mom. It was ideal, Matt. I will tell you, it was the ideal upbringing. My mother later married, and when I was 8, we moved back to Utah, and I left that farm life. But today, fast forward today, I will be fifth. I'm in my 50th year. I like to say it. I'm in my 50th year. I'm getting a head start on 50. Okay. So I will be 50 in October. I spent 10 years in corporate America. I worked for a young startup firm that was about 3 years old. This is in the 1980s. If you do the math, I was like 12 years old. Yeah, that's right. I was 12 years old. From the time I was 15, I made it more of a professional career through my schooling, my secondary education, and ended up working with that company for 10 years as they went from virtually nothing, literally in a basement with some, with small seed investment, to being a $1 billion a year cosmetics, anti-aging, consumer goods company traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Wow.
And I thought I was going to be there the rest of my life. My in with the company, it's so much about networking. I can look at my career and so many aspects of my life come down to networking. But the founder, one of the 7 founders of that company, was a mentor of mine, and that's how I got my job. And I thought, I'm just going to be like them. I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to be eventually they built again, you're going to laugh, a high rise in our little town. I lived about an hour south of Salt Lake City. So we weren't in the metro area. There's a little college town. The biggest building, they built the biggest building. It was 10 stories. Okay. So the biggest building was 10 stories. And I thought, I'm going to be in one of those top floors. But as fate would have it, I ended up getting married and married into 2 kids. This is where my dad's story starts. And had adopted those 2 boys. They were 4 and 7 when I met them. And they became my best friends. And I realized a few years into that working for somebody else wasn't gonna do it for me. Like I wanted to be present, So I became an entrepreneur. I've been doing entrepreneurial work since my mid-20s, and now and I've been divorced, so I know all about that road. If we have time, I'll tell you a story about that will tear your male heart out of your out of the heart space. But I'm happily remarried, and now my wife Stephanie and I are the parents of 10 kids. 4 different genetic backgrounds for those 10 kids. Bonus kids, we call them bonus kids or just our kids, but it helps some people to say step kids, right? Like I never refer to them as my step kids. Like I'm your dad as much as you want me to be. If you have a dad also, my first 2 children, my first 2 boys, their father actually passed away. Right. In his early 20s. I met their mother a year after that, ended up being married. And so they never had that dad. They lost their dad at 3 and 6. And so I was blessed. Honestly, I believe my story prepared me being a single, being the son, the only son of a single mom, and my mom meeting my now dad, John, when I was 6, and them getting married. And I hated it, by the way. Like my dad knows this. Like I hated my dad. Are you kidding me? You're gonna marry my mom, who I love. You're gonna take us away from heaven, from my grandfather, my grandparents, where I am the complete healthy, by the way, Matt, healthy focus. Like I wasn't a spoiled brat. I mean, we're on a farm. We're on a farm, and my grandfather would tell me how it is. Like in farmer terms, in his gentle way. But I felt like that experience with me prepared me to be a dad marrying into kids. And anyway, long story short, I had the first 2 and then 4. So 6 from my first marriage, 16 years of marriage, ended up unfortunately going through a divorce, rocked my world at the time, but has become a catalyst for change and metamorphosis. And I'm a better man now. I'm a more prepared. I'm a healthier man. I'm a more independent man, honestly. And I found my wife. We found each other. God led us to each other 10 years ago this year. She had 2 at the time. She'd been a single mom for 6 years. She was 22 with a 4-year-old, or 23 with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Divorced for 6 years. We met each other. We got married 8 months later to the day, and we've had 2 since. So that's us. 6 plus 2 plus 2. We're at 10 kids right now. Wow. I'm just going to say right now. I'm not saying anything there. And we have 6 grandkids as well.
That's unreal. You're actually, funnily enough, you're the second person that I've had on the podcast who has 10 kids. So I've had another guest on that I've interviewed, that has 10 children as well. So there you go, bit of a fun fact. So that's thanks for sharing that. That's a great story. And how growing up in that rural area on the farm, it's something that I think a lot of us don't have. Some people just don't have an insight into, right? Like the advantages and disadvantages that can come with that. I was lucky enough that I grew up at a young age, grew up in a rural area. My grandparents owned a cattle farm down in New South Wales, and so my dad is like a generational kind of farm person, and that's where, so I kind of get that. But what's one of the fondest memories you have from that time?
Wow. Like my wife knows, you talk to me about the farm, and it is part of the I left when we were 6. When we were 6. I'm tripolar. Apparently there are multiple personalities here. I left when I was 6. My parents went to school in Idaho, and then they moved back to Utah. So people are like, well, what do you mean? You grew up? Yeah, listen, when you go 0 to 6 on a farm, and you're out with the horses, and you're out with the cows, and you're chasing cows, and you're branding. I mean, this is, you grew up with that, Matt. Like it leaves an impression. Honesty. I will tell you, honesty. We used to play this game called the horse game. This is the most simple. I don't know if they play the horse game in Australia, but this is how simple it is on the farm. You get in the car. My grandfather drove, goodness, I'm going to say, so it was about 1980. So he's probably in a mid 1970s Ford F-150. Okay. Stock, bench seat, stick shift, manual transmission, no frills. But I love that truck. We'd go riding ditch. My grandfather, to bring in extra cash. It was a small cattle farm. They only ranched a couple hundred acres. I don't know. You guys do hectares down there, don't you?
Yeah.
So I don't know about how much that is, but they homesteaded it, cleared it. That's not a lot of. I mean, it's a decent sized land, but it's not a major operation like you see today with like factory, like mega farms, right? My grandparents were your quintessential small farmers. They ran about 50 mamas, 50 cows, so 50 pairs. And that's enough to bring in some hard cash once a year. And then my grandfather rode ditch. So he would get in that truck, and we'd go up to the canal, which happened to be just the canal, the river to the canal. And we're talking about a canal that is, we're not talking about a couple of feet. We're talking about 30 feet, 10 to 15, not even 10. It's probably 20 meters wide. Like it's big and deep. Like, don't go swimming in the canal is the rule, because at those drains, you might be, you might get caught. So just great memories riding the canal with him and metering ditches, right? For all the other farmers. He's the trusted guy that goes around and says, is this farmer doing his deal? Is this farmer who goes to church on Sunday? Is he actually stealing water? Is he, water is life. Pardon me. Him, in his, you'd call them wellies maybe, but his rain boots, right? His irrigation boots, they go up, halfway, midway past his calf, and his shovel, big spade. And because we'd go work our ditches then. We'd turn on the water and we'd go work ours and send them down the alfalfa fields and send them down the pasture. And I'd have my little wellies and my shorter shovel, a little blunter, and like nothing better. But I remember being in the car with my grandparents, and we were playing the horse game. And that is, one of you takes the right side and one of you takes the left side of the road. And you get to count the horses that you encounter. Like that, like there's no strategy here, right? But that's a pastime. Hey, what are we interested? So you count horses, and you count every horse as a point, except for white horses. And if you run into if you see a white horse, you go back to 0, right? And now if you see a white horse in a herd, everything past the white horse you can count again, right? As you're moving forward. But anything before that, you're wiped out at 0. So it's an interesting game. Those of us who love horses, we play that. I remember I was sitting in the back chair of my at the back seat of my grandparents' Toyota Corona, probably like a 1980 Toyota Corona. They don't make Coronas anymore. It's the precursor to the Camry, and I think I was cheating, maybe not. Counting extra horses. I don't remember. Not taking the horse. Well, that white horse had speckles on it, right? If it had speckles, and it's not a white horse.
No, that's
my grandfather, who, when he rode with my grandmother did the driving. Maybe he just wanted to rest because he worked from sun up till sundown. And it was grandma's car, actually. He drove the truck, but it was grandma's car. He just said from the front seat to the back, Seth, if you're going to play that way, then I'm not going to play with you. And like, he couldn't have chided me in any way that would have been more effective than just that really simple kind of matter of fact farmer. There was no guilt trip. There was no manipulation. There was no shame, other than the shame I felt on my own for being a little turd and cheating, playing with my grandfather. And never would I cheat again in the horse game. So
Yeah, it's funny how little tidbits like that are just such effective. I guess parenting strategies is probably the right word for it, right? Where it's not via force. It's just very subtle little things, and it goes to show from a kid's point of view how important the influence of our parents, especially those male role models in our life, and being able to spend time with them, and when we spend time with them, like getting those little bits and pieces from them, right? Like that's such a powerful story, that it's such a little tiny passing moment. Like it's not a grandiose gesture of something that sticks out in your mind. It's that.
Yeah. That and as you're saying that, I'm thinking how my grandfather was not a man of verbosity and many words. No, he was, he wasn't mute. He wasn't mute. Pardon me. He spoke, but he laughed. Right. I remember I can see him laughing. But he wasn't a man to do a lot of speaking. And so it's interesting that story comes to mind, because what I remember about my grandfather was him being. I remember him standing. I can remember him sitting in his rocking chair, ugliest green rocking chair, lazy boy, as we call him here, after a long, hard day's work, watching Major League Baseball and eating popcorn together. That was like the treat. I can remember the little wooden bowls that my grandmother used with salt and butter, and I had mine, and just watching baseball. That was a pastime, back then. My grandfather never sat down and taught me a lot of things. He actually was not a religious or of an overtly religious man. My grandmother ended up converting when my mom was 8, and my grandfather never did. My grandmother took, the kids that are above that wanted to come to the church, and the kids below that wanted to come to church, and she started, going to the church, and he would say that he was proud of his Christian family. He wasn't a man he wasn't that grandfather, and he didn't need to be. Like, he was everything. You asked my wife, you asked Stephanie, like, how does Seth feel about his grandfather? Like, when I cross the veil on the other side, first two people I want to meet, my grandfather and my grandmother. They weren't wordy people. My grandfather wasn't, but his life was, just looking at him made me want to be a man,
That's unreal. That's so good. That's it just goes to show something that I keep always coming back to within my life, where it's just words only mean so much. It's more about the actions that we take every day, and embodying what we want to be. Like, they're the things that are going to stick generationally, which, I mean, you've really just highlighted that.
And it's funny. Like, I never even have some of these thoughts. So Matt, I don't know what you're doing. You're waving the magic, Aboriginal wand down there. I am a man. Like, professionally, I get to communicate, and it's fun to do this because we're talking about fatherhood, and professionally, my wife and I work almost exclusively with women. I say almost exclusively. I've worked with plenty of men, but we work almost exclusively with women, tens of thousands of women around the world. So I don't get to have these dad conversations, very often. Although it's definitely who I am, but my profession requires me to communicate with people. And so I do speak a lot. And my family knows this. My kids, they jest about, nobody, we'll put it this way. My wife and I attended a Shabbat service, a Jewish Sabbath service. We were invited as Christian guests for a Jewish rabbi who was traveling through Utah. And so we had this Shabbat service because we're very interested in interfaith and multi-faith and respect. It was fascinating. We had a great time. And at the end, we were just, there were about 8 of us around a table. Everybody else had gone home, and we were just jamming, just talking about all kinds of stuff and jabbing each other. And I asked him a question about an interview he'd given with a particular podcast that was interviewing him about his viewpoints of Christianity, right? And specific sects within Christianity. He's a very open interfaith kind of a Jewish rabbi. And he said, well, yeah, you should go to this episode, and the first 30 seconds of that episode will sum up, how I feel about this particular question you posed. And then he proceeded for the next 30 minutes or so to expound on that. And I joked with him. I said, Rabbi Joseph, you telling me I could have got what took you 30 minutes, but I could have just listened to it in 30 seconds? He's like, you jerk. It was a loving jerk. That's how I am. That's how my kids, they know that I talk a lot and I seek to communicate. And so I don't want to say I'm pricked in the heart, but I'm just like, today's a reminder. Kids do care what you say. Like you can absolutely decimate the psyche and the self perception that kids have about themselves with your words. There is such a thing as emotional abuse. And as dads, we succumb to it. Like, I know abuse is used pretty strongly, but some of the things we do, they are words of hurt that we may not be abusers in the, in the way that we're all concerned about abuse, but that's how they experience it. But it really is who you are. It is who you are that really matters at the end of the day. I'm not talking about your job. I'm not talking about your position or your titles or how many financial resources you have or don't have. Like, at the end of the day, do your kids, do they know that you love them, even in the hard times, and they see that in your daily life? They see that because you spend time with them. When I was a young dad, again, marrying into 2 and being literally, I was 22 years old with a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And fortunately, I love to play, which is really good if you work with kids, because we just play. Like, that's who I was, my being. What am I going to teach them as a dad? Right. Well, before we even need to worry about getting to there, like, I have this memory. We lived in a little suburb here in Utah, and we had this canoe. I borrowed my dad's canoe. It was probably 15 meters. And we were going to the lake or something. But in preparation for that, these little boys hopped in that canoe, and we had a decent sized yard with grass. And I literally just wore myself out being the motor for that canoe. And I literally just ran around pushing, like, that's a workout. That's CrossFit. Do they do CrossFit down there in Australia? That's CrossFit.
We used to own a CrossFit gym. That was back in the day. That was
okay. Dude, that was CrossFit. But what I realized was, wow, good parenting takes time. And I literally, it was like a little inspiration from heaven hit me at my early 20s. And I'm still trying to live up to it today. Like you don't graduate from this. And I feel like I don't check these boxes. Like, I'm failing at this all the time, but it's kind of my compass. It's kind of my Southern Cross in the sky from, like, am I investing in my kids' relationship? 4 things did I read with them today? Did I work with them today? Not just go do your chores. Did I work with them? Right? Did I play with them? And did I pray with them? Read, work, play, pray. And that's I think where we can really make a difference. If we never said a word, or got into quote unquote teaching or whatever, like that would probably do 95% of everything we need to do as dads, I think.
Yeah, it's the there are four really good points, and the reading, like the reading's something that we've inherently done with our kids every day since they were born, right? Like we've every night, my wife will take it in turns, and we've got two kids, so we'll swap each night. So like one night I'll read to my son, the next night I'll read to my daughter, and vice versa. And that's just, they've just inherently, we've just done that since they were babies. And, now that they're both at school, there's a lot of advantage in doing that. But then also too, like the playing time can be such a innocuous thing that you just don't think about, because they're always, given my life and my circumstances a little bit like yourself, where, I've kind of chosen that entrepreneurial journey to try and be able to be as present as I can with them and not be tied to somebody else's schedule, right? And that's, and it's hard at times because there's certain things that I want to, like I have to do from a business point of view, and communicating that to them. And the one thing that I've been trying to do, especially the last probably 18 months, is, all right, if I've got to block out the day from a business point of view, let's try and make sure that if my son's coming to me with his soccer ball and saying, Dad, can we go kick the soccer ball? I go and kick the soccer ball for whatever amount, for whatever amount of time that is.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. Like it doesn't have to be. Absolutely.
And that's the thing, we get caught up, and I do too. You're talking about the guilt, like that guilt of maybe I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. And it's almost nice to hear that somebody who is further along in the fathering journey, like you're still experiencing that. You're still experiencing that. Should I be doing more? I'm not doing enough. Like, that's just something that's, it's unfortunately never going to go away, but making that conscious effort, like you said, to say, these are the four things that I am going to do each day, whether it be 5 minutes or it be 5 hours. Like, if I can tick those 4 boxes, I at least can lie my head on the pillow each night and go, okay, like I've done what I set out to do for the day.
Yeah. Like, what is the? I'm trying to remember who said it. There's somebody in the limelight a generation or two ago. But basically, this in the U.S., this would have been like a famous father. I don't remember if it was a political leader, a religious leader, or an author, but the point carries. The father writes in his journal that day, another wasted day, another unproductive day, right? And simultaneously, his son is writing in his journal. And in his journal, he says, best day ever. Went fishing with Dad. We give so much weight, and it's important as adults. We have much more to weigh as dads. The multifaceted burdens that we have chosen to carry. By the way, I don't use burden pejoratively. Hey, I chose this, and I would never want to not be a dad of 10, right? But the many multifaceted and deep and heavy, I think sometimes burdens that we carry, like we chose them though, right? But it's so critical for our kids to see the child in us. I really believe like that. That's it. And doing those 4 things with my kids helps me to do that. I remember, and today I'll tell you, like I will check myself, like Alcoholics Anonymous, like I'm Dad's Anonymous. Like, hey, I didn't get all those done yesterday. And when you have multiple children and multiple, we've got 2 teenagers. Well, we've got a 20-year-old who's about to move out, an almost 18-year-old who is moving out in the next year to go in full-time ministry for a couple of years. And then we've got this 8-year-old and 6-year-old. So we're being pulled in all these different directions, even though we only have 4 at home. It's not like when we had 6 at home, right? Or when you have more, right? But like I struggle, man, every day, I think, to do those. The more I plan, the more I write those in, the more they happen. The more leeway I give myself. I mean, no kidding. Like, fortunately, nobody's here right now. My 18-year-old son's doing some work for his business right now. And mom took the girls to swim lessons. It's swim lesson week. So there's an unusual calmness around there. I just want to breathe and say, wow, this does happen. But I will be interrupted no less than 236 times today. I don't know the real number. I want to get a counter. I really want to get a counter. And I get frustrated, right? Because right now we're in a major build in our business, both from a mainline business in the health world and international business. Plus we launched a podcast. Stephanie and I launched a podcast for women on self-care this year. And so we're we're extremely engaged. But 5 minutes to go play soccer or to go bowl, that's something I have started to work on more lately, because your business will ebb and flow and you'll be in different seasons of your life. And, there was a season where, as a divorced dad, a single dad with 4 kids still at home at the time, I had the ability, because of the way my businesses work and residual income and kind of the models that I've worked on. When my kids came home, there's so many things that single parents have to worry about. One of the things I did not have to worry about was money, right? I just, I was making great money and I could completely disengage. My kids were home for a weekend. I didn't have to pick up the phone, right? I could be 100% dad, the evenings that they were with me, like it was us. And now, fast forward 10, 12 years, we're back into a hardcore build because we have visions, we have dreams, and your kids need to see you have dreams. Matt, they need to see you. They need to say you say no sometimes, right? They need to. I always say the best thing that I can ever do for my kids, there are really 2 things. Number one, they can see me be an absolutely passionate, fulfilled, real person. Real meaning all the ups and downs. Like I'm real. Like there's no facade there. Like they can see me be real, but see me be healthy and progressive, growth oriented as an individual that dreams. That's the best gift I could ever give them. Number 2, from a marriage standpoint, and you can only do number 2 if you've done number 1. If you're broken in your marriage, broken as an individual, then guess what? You're just bringing that into a marriage. And it's as hard as it is to live with yourself when you're broken. Try taking 2 broken people, 2 crazy people, and make a great relationship. It's difficult. So the gift that my wife and I give them is to show them how a healthy, happy, progressive marriage works. Right. So I'm with you, man. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. And I'm in my 50th year. I've been a dad for 28 years. And I still try to be aware. Am I doing all that I can? No, you'll never do everything that is possible. So I can let myself off of that hook, but it's good to be introspective and ask myself and be aware, because it's showing that it's a concern to me. It's important to me. But so how do I judge it? Okay. What did I do on this list today? And if I'm in a rut, oh, okay. Yeah. You know what? If I were to go back over the last week, over the last month, boy, I really haven't been present with those things. I thought I was, right? Like I'm here, but it's a super simple, like the rule of 4. I think those are some of the most important things in our lives. Certainly you could add others, but I just think spiritually, intellectually, socially, even physically, like those 4 pretty much they're really accurate, an accurate measure of like how I might be impacting their life. And I realized, oh yeah, I've been dropping the ball. I thought I've been, so guess what? I don't have to feel bad about it. I can feel bad. I don't have to beat myself up over it. All I have to say is, okay, I've got today. What am I going to do today? What book are we going to go? Let's go pick out the book. I may not be available till 7, but I'm putting that book right here on my desk, right here. And if they're not going to bed, I'm not going to bed until we read Rumpelstiltskin for the 17th time or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, it's there's so many good points in what you've just said there, and almost topics that like I keep coming back to with people that I'm working with, and it's like, you have to be a little bit self-aware. Firstly, like you have to be aware that these things are happening. Like you have to be aware that maybe you're missing this, but then on top of that, once you're self-aware, it's almost like you don't want to be too hypercritical of yourself for missing out on stuff. It's like, okay, so, and this is, for me, it's been, the last 15, 20 years of owning a gym, working with people in the health and fitness space, where it's like you see this pattern of behavior, whether it's males or females or whoever, where it's like, firstly, we're not being self-aware of what's going on in our life. And then secondly, when we do get to that point, we become so self-critical and so hypercritical that it's almost like it freezes us from taking that further action to actually correct what we need to. And then transitioning into this type of work where I'm working with fathers, it's a really interesting thing to me to see. It doesn't matter what it is when it comes to change, or it comes to working towards something new or bettering ourselves. It's almost the same cycle that we tend to fall into. And it's something that I think we all think we should correct it, but we just need to be aware of it more so than trying to vigilantly not be it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like self-awareness is so critical. I mean, that's like probably the bottom of the, the hierarchical emotional pyramid that we all climb in life. But if you can be aware and then you can evaluate, like awareness is just observation without judgment, right? Okay, this I'm aware of this, I'm observing this, I'm recognizing that this is happening. Then we evaluate. Here's where we're able to take some judgment, but from a graceful standpoint, right? Like, listen, you're never going to do everything that could be done in your business, in your spirituality, but that was never the point either. It was never the point that you could do everything. It's just do what you could, or make some progress, right? So awareness, evaluate, and here's, I think, the kicker is how fast can you implement the action to corrective action to do one thing. Okay, so maybe you've really been subpar for a week, and it hits you. Like that hits me as a dad, and I feel bad. Like I mourn because I'm like, holy cow. Or sometimes I'll snap, I snap at one of my girls because it's interruption 233. Or even this, like, what if I snap at that 17 and 11/12 young man? Forget about man out there, right? Like it makes a difference to them too. And sometimes I want to be super hypercritical of myself. I'm like, wait a second. Okay, I'm aware of this. I'm going to evaluate. Okay, here's what it means. Like it sucks. Like I screwed up. Okay. But what am I going to do about, like, I am not, like, it's so critical to get from step 2 to step 3 immediately. Don't get stuck there in the evaluation standpoint, because if we just get in that circle, listen, like I've screwed up so much as a dad, I mean, I really have, because I've screwed up as a human. It's called being human. But at the same time, I know I'm an amazing dad. I know I've had so many amazing dad moments and nothing stellar. I'm talking about 13 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, in the bedroom with the kids. It was the 3 youngest at that time. And so they would have been, okay, Kate's 22. So we're probably like at a 9, a girl who's 10, a boy who's 8, and a boy who's 5. Okay. And it's reading time. And so we're pulling out, what are we reading? We're either reading C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, or we're reading J.R.R. Tolkien's trilogy, either The Hobbit or the trilogy, right? Lord of the Rings. I can't remember which one it was. I kind of thinking it was C.S. Lewis, and we wanted to do it like super different. So it was nighttime. It was like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and we've got the candle burning, and so we've got shadows being cast up on the wall, right? And we're sitting here reading, and that's a memory that I can't lose. That was maybe a stellar dad moment, but in the moment, it was just reading, with maybe reading, and all we did was literally take it one step further, right? But if you're in the slump, then it's not about doing all 4 today. 100% not. It's about doing one. Like, do one of those today. Commit, and then you're done. Like, if you do one of those today, and you're aware that you did it, like you're consciously aware, then great. You don't have to do anything else. Anything else you do is gravy, as we say here on the farm, right? It's overtime. It's extra. It's on top of. And then tomorrow, do it again. And what you'll do is you'll literally create a tiny habit, and you'll say, wait a second. There's so much fun. There's so much investment. There's so much good that I'm doing here. I can do more. And then you'll get yourself to where you could be cranking you get on a streak. I've done for the last 7 days. I've done all 4 of these things. And then you start to catch a momentum, right? Just do one.
It's just building that momentum, right? It's that little bit every day. Like, it's always, I've mentioned it on the show before. There's a saying from a guy that I've learned a lot from, and this is it. He uses this saying as it pertains to strength and conditioning, or training, and it's he says, move the dirt. And the longer version of that is, some days you'll have a shovel, some days you'll have a spoon, but as long as you move a little bit of dirt every day, we're getting better. And that's it's something that, I've got a whiteboard here. I've actually got it written on my whiteboard, like, move the dirt, and it just reminds me every day. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have these monumental things happen all the time. Some days they will, but other days, like, it's just going to be about getting that spoon and moving a little bit of dirt from one pile to the next.
I love that. You're talking to a dirt guy right here, right? Like,
that's right.
This afternoon, I'll be in our garden. We do organic gardening here, just personally. I'll be planting red onions and Spanish golden onions, and or move the. I'll use the watered down version here on the podcast. Move the manure. You could insert any other. We have some cows here. Well, we raise our own cows, just a small little herd because we're just on a few acres. Horses, but yeah, like, move the dirt. In Japan, they have an old saying, a proverb. I speak fluent Japanese. I did ministry in Japan when I was 19. We're in Japan all the time. We do a lot of business there, and it's chiri mo tsumoreba yamato naru, which means, even if you just gather the dust together, granules of dust, eventually it will become a mountain, right? So
that's so good. That's unreal. On that note, Seth, I am respectful of your time and respectful of where you're at. So, would you like to, before we wrap up, just let everybody know where they can find you? Plug your podcast and plug anything else that you think the audience might be able to get some value from.
Well, thank you, Matt. This has been stinking fun. It's
been great. I've really enjoyed it.
I have as well. I'm excited, actually, just to continue our conversation. We love Australia. We absolutely love Australia. I have to ask you this question. Do you know where Lord Howe Island is?
I do.
Oh, okay. That's one of my wife and I's favorite places on planet Earth. We visited there, I think, 2019, December. We may be going back for our anniversary this year. So,
Wow, great.
anyway, how fun to make friends. I love what you're doing. I love podcasting. Like the people who, your audience who's listening to this right now, having a conversation, like we're building community here, Matt, Seth, and you. So thank you for joining, Matt. Thank you for hosting. So you can find me and my wife, Stephanie, online. We host a podcast, probably not for you if you're listening to this show, although we do have some like diehard closet male listeners. It's called The Forever Young Show, theforeveryoungshow.com, which is a self-care podcast for women. So maybe your counterpart, if you have a counterpart, she would probably love that show. We interview women from all over the world. We've interviewed in Bangkok. We've interviewed, in outlying territories, Puerto Rico. We've had super famous people. I don't know if you know who, Matt, if you know who Erin Brockovich is in the U.S. Okay, so we just had Erin Brockovich on the show recently. We do some work with her on the professional side. American Ninja Warrior. Okay, so we just had the women's champion from American Ninja Warrior on as well. We talk all things women self-care. Matt, I'm going to tell you, I'm the rookie on the show because I'm the only dude who's ever been on the show. We talk about all things women, like all things women. But it's a lot of fun. We love serving women. And professionally, we run an affiliate marketing business. Again, we work with men and women all over the world, primarily women, because women are more likely to get involved in affiliate marketing, especially moms, right? Because it's something they can fit in. So that's what we do professionally. We've built, get this, and this ties into being a better dad. We built a $60 million business with 0 employees.
Wow.
Just through affiliates. We did over $60 million last year, and it kicks off a residual income. And so we teach women how to create those income models from home. So you can find us at theforeveryoungshow.com. You can also find me, Seth Mulder, on Instagram at Seth Mulder. That's SETHMULDER. I'm sure it'll be in the link anyway. .CEO. We started this movement. You can see my shirt there, Matt. Creating entrepreneurs online. That's where we live these days. So
fantastic. And I'll make sure we'll have all the links to all of that in the show notes. So it'll be easy for you to find when you are ready to jump over and check out Seth and check out his podcast. But Seth, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to do it again and continue diving a little bit deeper into the topics that we did, because it's been a lot of fun, a lot of valuable information. And thanks so much for joining me. Thanks everyone else, and we will see you all next week. Goodbye.